My ex-boyfriend quickly broke up with me as soon as his Bok Noyet Kwang returned. Heartbroken, I rushed to the bar and drank until I didn't know what was happening anymore. However, I woke up 5 years later. I have a husband and children. Wait, I'm not enjoying my single life enough. Panicked, I immediately called the phone number with the name, husband. As soon as I opened my mouth, I called my ex-boyfriend's name. The other end of the line fell into terrifying silence. Then a low but resentful voice rang out. Do you still remember him? But you married me. Is it too late to regret now? Why does this hateful voice sound like that of my sworn enemy? So my ex-boyfriend's dream lover returned, and he immediately proposed to break up with me. Because I was so heartbroken, I rushed into the bar and drank until I didn't know what was happening anymore. In a drunken stupor, I clung to a strange man, stubbornly holding him responsible for my broken love. But when I woke up, I was 5 years later. Next to me, there is a child. I lay in bed, my mind blank, my expression so bored that I didn't want to live anymore. The little boy gently touched my forehead. His soft voice rang out. Mom, are you still not feeling well? I lay still, pretending to be dead, not wanting to say a word. Mom, who can understand this pain? Having a heartbreak, having a drink, taking a nap, waking up 5 years older, and having a child. Wait, my child sat up startled as if he had been electrocuted. His hand held the small face in front of him, big round eyes, clear double eyelids, smooth white skin, high and straight nose bridge. He's handsome, but why doesn't he look like me? I tilted left and right, staring, making the boy worried. Mom, what's wrong with you? Unable to bear it, I asked directly. Who is your father? Unexpectedly, the boy also asked me the same question. He raised his head, his face filled with bewilderment. Mom, are you and Dad arguing again? The corner of my mouth twitched. How do I explain to a child that I traveled in time 5 years ago? I had to beat the village drum. Mom is just testing me. The boy looked at me with disdain and then bowed his head to rummage around on the bed. A moment later, he handed me the phone, his face as serious as an old man's. Deeply advised, Mom and Dad, if there's any misunderstanding, then say it clearly. Stop arguing all the time. This month hasn't even reached the 20th, and Dad has already been sleeping on the sofa for half a month. I questioned. Wait, who did I marry to make things so bad? I picked up the phone, unlocked the fingerprint, scrolled to the contacts. The first number was saved as husband. I pressed call. Beep. The call connected, but the other end of the line said nothing, only the sound of light breathing. I swallowed my saliva, suddenly feeling nervous. After all, who did I marry? For some reason, a familiar name popped out of my mouth. Tru Yin Nin. As soon as I finished speaking, I immediately regretted it. He broke up with me to return to Bok Noyet Kwang. I absolutely cannot marry him. Sure enough, the other end of the line was silent for a beat. Then a voice full of resentment rang out. Are you regretting marrying me? He's a scumbag. Are you still not over him? You've already married me. Is it too late to regret it now? Why does this voice sound like my enemy? I rolled my eyes and my voice became sharp. You are my husband, the father of my child. On the other side, Tadekai gritted his teeth and asked again. No, then who do you want to be? Tru Yin Nin, save me. Even though I've traveled 5 years in time, even if I get married or have children, it's still acceptable. But why is my husband my constant enemy from childhood to adulthood? Tadekai and I are childhood friends, but since childhood, we have disliked each other. It all started when as a child, I really wanted a younger sister. When I was in kindergarten, I relied on myself to be fatter, so I forced Tadekai to come to my house, forced him to wear a skirt, and took a bunch of photos of him wearing a skirt as souvenirs. From then on, Tadekai started to hate me. As he grew older, when he was able to resist, he came back to bully me, steal my toys, and steal my snacks. After being tortured by him many times, I also began to hate him. In elementary school, we fought martial arts. Today he put spiders in my toy box. Tomorrow I throw mice in his school bag. In middle school, we switched to mind games. This time he ranked first. Then next time I risked my life to push him down to number 2. And so, we fought each other all the time from childhood to adulthood. They went to the same high school together. Then they both entered the same university. From competing for scores to following all sorts of things in life. Even compete with your lover. At that time, I had just graduated from college. I practiced overtime every day and was tired like a dog. Then suddenly my friend said to me, Tadakai has an excellent girlfriend in every way. After listening, I just smirked. What excellent girl would even pay attention to him? My friend sighed. The whole world has eyes on him. Only you don't. I tilted my head, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear, still typing on the keyboard. Don't make fun of his damn appearance. What about him? 1m88 tall, handsome, highly educated, rich family. Nothing that girls like. My typing fingers paused for a moment, then immediately objected. But it still doesn't change his shitty personality. Whatever I like, he takes it. When I was 16 years old, I first fell in love with the handsome guy in the next class. At that time, the relationship between me and Tadakai was a little more harmonious, so I asked him to be my matchmaker. As a result, you guessed it, the handsome guy in the next class ran to tell me that he liked that bastard and wanted me to be with him. So, is this the reason why you intentionally flirt with the beauty he likes in the future? But what else? He can bend my handsome man, so I can also make the beauty open her eyes and clearly see his true nature. My friend let out a sigh. Let's not talk anymore, but this time Tadakai actually has a girlfriend. I think in terms of love, you're about to lose to him. There was no way I could stop typing and came up with an extremely decisive answer. And so half a month later, I had another boyfriend named True Yin Nin. He is gentle, handsome, and more talented than that bastard Tadakai in every way. Unfortunately, in the end, True Yin Nin left me to return to his dream lover who had just returned home, and also chose the right moment to stand in front of Tadakai to say goodbye to me. If it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have run to the bar in the middle of the night to drink to relieve my sadness, and maybe I wouldn't have woken up 5 years later with another boy by my side, my common child, and that bastard Tadakai. A while later, Tadakai returned. Little Jong Tintin ran to open the door for him. Tadakai, at 27 years old, looks much more mature than before I traveled. His physique is still as tall as before, even more stylish than before. I sat on the sofa, looking at him coldly. As soon as he entered the door, he immediately hugged Jong Tintin. The father and son were happy, as if the whole world was theirs alone. Most importantly, the two faces are terrifyingly similar. No wonder why I found Jong Tintin familiar from the beginning. It turns out I gave birth to a mini version of the archenemy. I snorted coldly. If it was before time travel, with the personality of that bastard Tadakai, he would definitely have snorted back at me. But beyond my expectations, he didn't. Tadakai carried Jong Tintin and strode straight in front of me. Then he knelt down on one knee right next to my feet. Suddenly a bouquet of red roses appeared in her hand. He raised his head to look at me, his handsome face filled with gentleness and a bit of flattery. Wife, I'm wrong. You shouldn't have been so fierce with me today. I was stunned by this scene, completely frozen on the sofa. The next second, Tadakai stood up and hugged my waist. The tone carries a bit of pampering. Wife, I just don't want you to mention another man's name, especially that scumbag name. Next to him, Jong Tintin saw this and also ran over, looking up with a face similar to Tadakai's and imitating his clothes. Mom, don't change your mind. Tintin doesn't want to change Dad. Look at these two faces, especially the face of Tadakai, who has been my enemy for 20 years and now comes to coddle me. The shock was too great. Why the hell was I nodding absent-mindedly? At 10 p.m., I lay in bed, my mind still a mess. Does Tadakai even know how to act like a babe to me? Is my husband really him next year? I even gave birth to a little devil with him. It wasn't until Tadakai came out of the bathroom with wet hair, wearing only a pair of loose pajama pants, revealing the naked upper half of his body. I saw each drop of water sliding from her sharp chin to her collarbone, then rolling along her firm chest muscles. Finally, it flows down to the sexy contours of your abdominal muscles. An idea suddenly flashed in my mind. Could it be that I was married by edict? Am I that shallow? I blankly looked at Tadakai with his half-naked body in front of me, as he got closer and closer to me. Reflexively, I swallowed my saliva. He chuckled, his throat moving seductively. Then, right before I could react, he jumped up and hugged me, rubbing his wet hair against my chest. He raised his head, his chin resting on my shoulder, and started kissing along my white neck. The hand also hides under the shirt. The heat from his lips spread to my skin, making my whole body weak. Half of the resistance movements are just invitations. He kissed my earlobe, his breath hot. I tried to say no. Tadakai, don't be like that. He kissed my red ear, his voice vague. Wife, I want it. It seems this body is familiar to you. It's extremely difficult for me to resist. When his lips touched mine, in a trance, I lightly bit the tip of his tongue. He just stopped temporarily. I panted, leaning against his chest, feeling extremely complicated. Why am I so useless? Just one kiss, and already I can't move. Tadakai hugged my waist, his voice deep and seductive. Wife, what's wrong? I tried my best to push him away, reluctantly sat up on the bed, and explained how I came from 5 years ago. But Tadakai did not believe it. He didn't let me resist, pushed me down on the bed, put his hands on me, and coaxed me. Wife, stop looking for excuses. Today you must pay taxes. Seeing that I was still pushing away, Tadakai suddenly showed a feeling of self-pity. Wife, are you still angry about that morning call? I said, I came from 5 years ago. I'm not your wife. Tadakai suddenly asked a fatal question. So are you Jong Kien-Noyet? I am Jong Kien-Noyet from 5 years ago. So she's still my wife. Besides, 5 years ago we were together. At that time, Tin was already in my belly. I was with you 5 years ago. Am I still pregnant? Looking at me seriously, Tadakai suddenly panicked. Wife, what's wrong with you? Tin is 4 years old this year. 5 years ago, I was definitely pregnant. Then, he suddenly uttered a sentence. Wife, have you lost your memory? Tadakai quickly took me to the hospital for an urgent x-ray. After the doctor diagnosed that I had no injuries, he was reassured. When we got home, we decided to sit and talk frankly on the sofa. Wife, Mr. Jong Kien-Noyet, did you really come from last year? Yes, I really have amnesia. Two voices spoke at the same time. We looked at each other. I was the one who avoided eye contact first. Tadakai suddenly laughed softly. Now I believe you came from 5 years ago. I'm no longer in the mood to argue with you. Hastily asked, aren't we mortal enemies? Why did I marry you? Tadakai shrugged and smiled gently. Just get married for the sake of your children. The prerequisite for getting married for the sake of children is that I slept with him. But every time we meet, we argue bitterly. That cannot happen at all. I looked at Tadakai suspiciously. He calmly explained. At that time I hated you so much. If it weren't for your pregnancy, we wouldn't have been able to be together. From the moment I crossed time until now, I have witnessed his gentleness and patience with my own eyes. He and Jong Tin also felt your intimacy and coddling with me 5 years later. So is all of this a lie? Does that mean you married me just out of responsibility? Tadakai was silent. I nodded, understanding. If that's the case, then we can't separate. Suddenly a bout of dizziness, the world spinning around, came. My mind became more and more confused. The surrounding space from the quiet of the living room suddenly turned into the bustle of the bar. It seemed like I was falling into a man's arms. His voice is very familiar. It is to Kentucky. He called me Jong Kien-Noyet. He wrapped his arms around me, pulled me out of the noisy crowd, stuffed me into a car, and took me to a house. While carrying me back to the room, he muttered and scolded. Jong Kien-Noyet, are you crazy? This late at night, I ran to the bar alone and got drunk. Since people gave me wine, I also drank it. Aren't you afraid something will happen? Is it worth it just because of a man to become like this? I was in a daze and couldn't tell the difference. Is this 5 years ago or 5 years later? The body suddenly became very hot, limp, and helpless. Tadakai was angry, but under the influence of alcohol, his face looked so handsome that I couldn't help but want to kiss him. It was really hot, very uncomfortable, and Tadakai's mouth kept opening and closing, looking extremely seductive. I lost patience and pressed my lips directly against those constantly chattering lips. The world instantly became quiet. I quickly wanted to take off Tadakai's shirt. He was just stunned for a moment. Then strong arms held his waist tightly, stopping his restless hands. His voice became hoarse without realizing it. Jong Kien-Noyet, do you know what you are doing? I clung tightly to his shirt, not knowing why I said loudly. I know, just lie still. Tadakai laughed softly, his voice low and seductive to the bone. Finally, he let go, looked up at me, with a ghostly smile. To the end, so I let it go? I can do whatever I want. But at the last minute, he suddenly stopped, reached out, and took a small box from the bedside table, his voice a bit restrained. If you don't want to have another kid for no reason, use this. Just this one sentence. I suddenly remembered the sentence. Marry for your children. Tadakai 5 years later said I was 3 points away from low right on the spot. I immediately sobered up and let go of my desire. I tried to restrain myself from touching the smooth, tempting skin under my hand, frantically pulled his shirt back for him, and then lay down limply. It's reasonable. From childhood to adulthood, he always made people hate him. Seeing his face, I couldn't do it. Tadakai questioned, not paying attention to his already red face. Suddenly, his face froze. I immediately got out of bed, walked slowly to the bathroom, and turned on the cold water. Jongkian Noyet, are you human? Were you teasing me first? I slammed the door shut, blocking Tadakai's angry and embarrassed words, and sat crouched in a bathtub full of cold water. I hugged my hot face, sighed, and exclaimed, "It's so dangerous. I almost married that bastard Tadakai." By the time I stepped out of the bathroom, Tadakai had calmed down, but his whole body still emitted cold air. As soon as he saw me, his eyes were sharp as knives, shooting at me. "Jongkian Noyet, is it fun to tease me?" I remained silent. Tadakai's eyes became even colder. The tone was sour, full of sarcasm. "What's wrong? You still haven't forgotten your ex-boyfriend." I glanced at him, jumped directly onto the bed, and pulled the blanket up to cover me. "Forget your head. It's just that I'm afraid of getting pregnant and having to marry you. Jongkian Noyet, let's talk." Tadakai lost patience, yanked the blanket, pulling me into his arms. I was very close to him. Our eyes met, creating an extremely shady atmosphere. I blinked, deciding to say something to break up this awkward situation. "It's not because I haven't forgotten. I'm just afraid of being pregnant." Tadakai suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. I shook my head in refusal. "No. If we followed Dada's words 5 years later, we were not married and had children with a bad relationship at that time. If I really had an unwanted pregnancy, I would definitely have an abortion and absolutely not give birth to Jongtin. But the truth is that the boy is still born, and Tadakai and I are still married. That proves there was something preventing me from having an abortion. So, to avoid having to marry Tadakai, the best way is not to sleep with him." After soaking in cold water, I was unusually calm, looking at Tadakai with an irritated, suppressed expression. I raised the corner of my mouth, half joking, half serious. "What's wrong? Do you want me to sleep with you that much?" His ears immediately turned red. I deliberately leaned closer to his ear and lowered my voice. "Wait, do you like me?" This rare, sharp-tongued man did not refute my narcissistic statement. On the contrary, he was so embarrassed that he became angry and shouted loudly. "Not at all. It's fine if it's not there." After the night at the bar, I secretly felt lucky to have avoided a disaster. But I didn't expect that another disaster would come. Due to corporate policy reasons, the whole country is a bit mixed, and the economic situation is unclear. My family and his family have a very good relationship. So the two sides decided to get married to overcome difficulties together, and we were the most suitable candidates. Hearing this news, I quickly ran to find my grandfather to protest. He just patted my head, completely ignoring my protests. "No, getting married is the best solution. Be good Noyet Noyet." No matter how much I rolled and struggled, my grandfather refused to give in. I'm speechless. I could avoid getting married because I was pregnant, but I couldn't avoid an arranged marriage. I'm not committed. That night, I went to Tadakai's house, climbed the wall, followed the balcony, and sneaked into his room. As soon as I entered the room, I saw Tadakai coming out of the bathroom half naked. Scoundrel!" I whistled and pretended to scream loudly. Tadakai's face turned red, and she quickly grabbed the towel on the bed to cover her panicked appearance. After that, he reached out and covered my mouth, threatening in a low voice. "If you don't want to marry me, you'll scream so loudly. Furthermore, are you talking about the scoundrel?" I struggled too hard. While the two sides pulled back and forth, both of us accidentally tripped and fell. The moment he fell to the ground, Tadakai instinctively used his body as a back cushion to protect me. Thump! We fell limply to the ground. It hurt so much. I rubbed my elbow that was hit, crawled up from Tadakai's body, mumbled reproachfully. "Why are you covering my mouth?" Can't say a few words. But for a long time, I still didn't hear him answer. I turned my head and looked back, only to see Tadakai closing his eyes and lying still on the floor, not moving as if he had passed out. This guy is so childish. Even though he's this old, he still pretends to be dead like when he was a kid to scare me. I sat on the ground, rolled my eyes, and scolded him for his childishness. Hey, it's not funny at all. Wake up quickly. The floor is dirty. Stop joking around. But he remained motionless. I tried pulling Tadakai's hair and punching her chest, but there was no reaction. At this point, I started to panic. I struggled to hold him in my arms and patted his face, but there was still no response. I frantically wanted to call an ambulance, but just as I was about to dial the phone, a hand pressed it down. It's Tadakai. Brother, are you okay? My voice choked, my eyes turned red. You scared me again. At this moment, I realized that I had been so worried that I cried without knowing it. The maid downstairs also ran up, stood outside, and knocked on the door. Master, what's wrong? I heard her voice. Noyet, Noyet, and Tadakai frowned and rubbed the back of their necks. Then, when I heard something, I kept asking again. He cleared his throat slightly and calmly replied, Nothing. I'm on the phone with her, just turn it on speaker. The maid confirmed it a few times, saw there was no problem, then left. The room became quiet again. I saw Tadakai's eyebrows still furrowed, and I couldn't help but reach out and gently touch the back of his head. Does it hurt? Tadakai raised her hand to wipe the tears from my cheeks, her voice gentle. It's not painful, wife. Why are you crying? I was surprised and raised my head to look at him. Tadakai patted my head again and smiled gently. It turns out the wife from 5 years ago is still the same as in my memory. Tadakai and I sat facing each other. I looked at him suspiciously and asked tentatively, Did you travel from in years from now? The air conditioner in the room turned on at a very low temperature. While talking, I couldn't help but use it myself. Tadakai nodded, pulled the small blanket on the bed, and covered my bare legs. Then I'll ask about our future marriage. Nothing happened when we broke up, but now we're being forced to marry. So what happened to make you and I give birth to Jongtin? I really don't understand why I married Tadakai for the sake of the child. If we really had to get married, considering the personalities of both of us, it would definitely be a marriage in name only. Yet 5 years later, I met Jongtin. What was the meaning? Tadakai raised his hand to pat my head, but I avoided him. He bowed his head and smiled. His voice was warm, exactly the same as the voice I heard 5 years later. Noyet, Noyet, we are definitely a match made in heaven. I widened my eyes and my voice began to rise. How is that possible? Tadakai calmly shrugged his shoulders, his mischievous expression gradually matching the Tadakai I knew. Why can't it be? We are childhood sweethearts, and we are completely a match made in heaven. I jumped up from the bed and couldn't help but rub the back of my hand, which got goosebumps because of what he said. Tadakai, have you forgotten that we are sworn enemies? Water and fire cannot be tolerated. Without you there is no me. Without me there is no you. Tadakai handed back the blanket I had just thrown down and said calmly, So tell me, how can we be intolerant? Having just mentioned this, I can say that 3 days and 3 nights are not over yet. I admit that forcing him to wear a skirt in kindergarten was too much, but his revenge mentality was too great. In first grade, why did you tell my deskmate that I was a pervert who specialized in forcing boys to wear dresses? When Tadakai heard that, he was stunned, then smiled helplessly. Just because of this little thing? I pouted and mumbled. What's the little matter? Because of your rumors, there's not a single male student in the entire elementary school who's willing to play with me. As soon as the male idol I secretly loved saw me, he ran away, afraid that I'd force him to wear a skirt. Tadakai held back laughter until she almost choked. If you say it's a rumor, have you really never bought a dress and forced your tablemate to wear it? I felt guilty in my heart. The truth is yes, but before I could do it, Tadakai interrupted me. I originally intended to let him wear it, but I was stubborn. So, in 4th grade, when we bet on the final exam, whoever scores lower will have to listen to a request from the other person. I'm losing to you. If I force you to wear a dress, I'll accept it. Unfortunately, I was caught by a classmate who happened to be my little male idol. It's strange to see him not running. I thought for a moment, that's true. I forced him to wear it, but I didn't force him to wear it. Why is he running? At this moment, Tadakai smiled crookedly like a fox. I practiced judo since I was young, and my brother forced me to wear a skirt. My weak little male god. It's strange that he doesn't run. Me? Is this my fault? Tadakai smiled. I won't blame you either. I rolled my eyes and continued to tell the story. So when you got to middle school, why did you throw away the love letter I sent to the boy in the next class? Even when I was in high school, I secretly had a crush on the school's male god. I clearly asked him to set me up with the male god. As a result, the next day he came running and said he wanted me to complete it for the two of us in just one night. My straight male idol suddenly turned around and told me that he was curvy. There are a lot of things like this, saying you are my enemy. What's wrong? After hearing to Dakai, he complained for a long time and really couldn't bear it anymore. Laughed so much that my back was bent. It took a long time to sit up straight again. So have you ever thought about me liking you? I gasped, my eyes widened. He continued, No yet. I don't know why you traveled 5 years later. I also don't know why I came back to this time. But there is something I have to tell you. Tadakai has liked you since childhood. I married you voluntarily. Zhang Tintin was not surprised. But sometimes when he said these words, his face carried a smile. His whole body seemed to radiate a gentle light. I was stunned, preparing to refute, and let out a loud bang. Tadakai suddenly fell down again. I patted my face, pulled my hair, and shook it vigorously. Tadakai also did not react. Is there anyone? Tadakai fainted. In the hospital, when I saw that the person who woke up was Tadakai, I breathed a sigh of relief. Tadakai 5 years later, very kind, very gentle with me. To be honest, that's the type of man I like. But for some reason, I still find it strange that the current Tadakai is a bit more pleasing to the eye, even though he is quite obnoxious. Tadakai was lying on the hospital bed, crossing his legs and instructing me to peel an apple for him, constantly criticizing Zhang Qiannoyet. You peeled the apple, but left out the meat too. Are you just going to let me eat the seeds? He was injured because he saved me. I should sympathize a little. I showed my sympathy by biting off all the peeled apple and then giving the remaining core to him, smiling very gently. Hey, eat. Tadakai 3 points. He took the apple core. His face suddenly turned red. His eyes moved back and forth between me and the apple. His voice was also somewhat awkward. Huh? Are you letting the patient eat this? Besides, it's full of saliva. If you want a snake to kiss you, you don't need to do that. Why is Tadakai suddenly so strange? An apple 1 bit into that could also be associated with a kiss? Thinking about Tadakai's words 5 years later that he had secretly loved me since childhood, could it ever be true? I held another apple. My eyes glanced at Kentucky. When I saw him actually trying to bite that core, I couldn't help but get goosebumps. I immediately snatched back the apple core. He just put it in his mouth and threw it into the trash. Are you really going to eat it? Tadakai held the other half of the apple one gave him, muttering, Didn't you give it to me? Why did you eat it when I gave it to you? Tadakai also nodded seriously. Do you really like me? My face became inexplicably hot. I cleared my throat. When I didn't know what to do, I just scolded him first. Tadakai, are you sick? You can eat any trash. Tadakai didn't say anything, just pointed to the hospital gown on his body. Oh, I'm in the hospital. I'm really sick. Tadakai was in a single patient room. There were only 2 of us in the room. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. From childhood to adulthood, he and I have always faced each other, and there has never been such a peaceful scene in the same house. I found something to talk about, mentioning the previous engagement. Cough. My grandfather talked about intermarriage. What do you think? Tadakai raised his head, stopped eating the apple. His voice calmly said, What else? This is a good thing for both families. Don't you want it? Confirmed, he likes me. I pretended not to know, mentioning his rumored girlfriend. So what's your girlfriend up to? Tadakai immediately choked up. His face was red and blue. We broke up. I followed suit, full of meaning. Have you broken up yet? I know he's never had a girlfriend. When the rumors spread, he even came to explain to me. But after I started dating Tru Yen Nin, he brought his girlfriend, who he had previously denied, back and forth to where Tru Yen Nin and I were dating. At that time I thought he was mentally ill. Now that I think about it, I'm probably jealous, right? Tadakai quickly nodded. Yes, we broke up. It doesn't affect our marriage. Immediately after that, his tone became resentful. What about your ex-boyfriend? Doesn't it affect the marriage? I immediately objected. I didn't say I agreed to get married. Tadakai was so angry that he dropped the apple and raised his voice. You haven't ended your relationship with him yet? Then you tease that the lover of his dreams has come back. What do you still like about him? Seeing him get excited, I was happy again. I arrogantly nibbled on the apple, while deliberately irritating him. Whatever you like. Tadakai was so angry that I insisted on being discharged from the hospital. I glanced at the test results and saw there was no problem, so I ignored him. As soon as I brought him home, I encountered his mother, Mrs. Chu. As soon as Mrs. Chu saw me, she smiled until the corners of her eyes wrinkled. I wasn't worried about Noyet criticizing this kid, but seeing that the two of you have such a good relationship, I feel reassured. Having said that, she deliberately glanced at my hand placed onto Dakai's waist. I have 3 points. Even if I jump into the Yellow River, this matter cannot be washed away. Just now, he kept thinking about what I said that I still like True Yin Nin. All the way, he kept attacking me and licking my dog. I was so angry that I just wanted to pinch him, but unexpectedly my mother misunderstood me. Tadakai immediately smiled brightly. Your mother and Noyet have always been close. Ms. Chu covered her mouth and secretly laughed. This kid finally got what he wanted. From now on, don't make Noyet angry again. Do you hear? After speaking, she turned to me. Noyet, if he dares to bully me, just tell me. I will help him. I stood frozen in place, while Tadakai smiled cunningly. It's so itchy. I conveniently touched Tadakai's toned abs, then roughly pinched them. It hurts. Zhangqian Noyet, you crazy woman. I have no chance to fight back in this marriage. My mother raised her eyebrows and used her gentlest tone to settle the matter. You are the only girl in the family. Children are inevitable. I think little Akai is not bad. He has been running after you since he was little. Although he is not good at coaxing girls, he is handsome and intelligent. Marrying him won't hurt. If you really don't like it, you can give birth to one child and then divorce. Your mother was also like that. Don't dramatize the problem. Just try to nurture your feelings. First, after you take power, you can change to someone else. What my mother said woke me up. Could this be the reason why I gave birth to Zhang Tintin? Pointing at the outfit of hoodie and jeans I was wearing, Tadakai opened his mouth to remind. Are you going to dress like this? I lowered my head to look at my office outfit, confused, and asked again. Isn't that okay? Tadakai leisurely glanced at me and extended her voice. Your ex-boyfriend is bringing the lover of his dreams to the party. Are you sure you want to dress like this? Of course not. Remembering that scum True Yin Nin embracing the lover of his dreams and then showing guilt when breaking up with me, my blood boiled again. If the time travel incident hadn't happened that day, I would have settled with him a long time ago. Now it's good. They brought themselves to the door. Sometimes my friend intentionally called me to vent his anger. I aggressively ordered Tadakai to turn the car around to my nearby apartment. I told someone to bring the dress. Tadakai suddenly cleared his throat, his tone a bit unnatural. There's a set of your rights and wrongs in the back seat. Do you like it? I turned my head and saw a large red gift box placed neatly in the back seat. I went to the back seat and opened the box. Inside is a high-end red evening gown with an open back. Besides, there is also a set of sparkling jewelry. I tried it on. The size was exactly the same as the dresses I often wear, and the brand is also my favorite. Not bad. You also know my mistakes. I mumbled a sentence. Unexpectedly, Tadakai heard it and suddenly coughed. I looked up and saw him coughing until his ears were red, his eyes still filled with moisture. Remembering how he secretly liked me, I couldn't help but want to tease him. Could it be that you had your fill that night when I drank? This time, the top of Tadakai's head felt like it was about to smoke. He turned his head quickly and stammered an explanation. I don't. The next second, he suddenly turned his head away. His embarrassed voice rang out. Zhangqian Noyet, why didn't you say a word when you changed clothes? I didn't pay any attention, finished wearing the dress, turned around and told him. Zip it for me. Tadakai did not move. I began to lose patience and was about to turn around to urge him when a pair of warm hands gently touched my bare back. The hot temperature on my skin startled me. With a snap, the zipper was pulled up. My face also became hot. I tried to be calm, took out the mirror, put on the accompanying jewelry, and added bright red lipstick, full of strong aura. When everything was ready, I realized that Tadakai had been silent for a long time. Unaccustomed to his silence in front of me, I smiled and said, Don't say anything. Are you embarrassed? He didn't say a word. His ears became even redder. After teasing Tadakai, my face turned red again. It wasn't until I entered the banquet hall that I gradually calmed down. The person I considered my sworn enemy since childhood turned out to be the person who secretly loved me for many years. Who can stand this truth? I told my good friends the story of Tadakai secretly liking me since childhood, but the whole group glared at me with disdain. Think about it. If he doesn't like you, why is he running after you all day? From childhood to adulthood, you took his breakfast every day. He always scolded you, but he never stopped bringing you food. When I was in middle school, when I first woke up, someone dared to pull my hair and pull my bra strap. After that, they were all beaten by Tadakai in a great match. In high school, he finally mustered up the courage to confess his love to you. As a result, he secretly fell in love with the school's male god, and even asked someone to be a matchmaker to introduce him to the male god. Tadakai had to endure bitterly and discovered that the male god was gay. So you asked someone to explain it to you clearly, but you turned around and cursed him for bending the male god. Forget these things. But this is too much. When he graduated from university, Tadakai was accidentally rumored to be in love with a girl from the same department. I just reminded him a bit to gauge his reaction, but he immediately turned around to find a boyfriend. Tusk. When you openly love that scumbag, Tadakai drank all night, constantly looking at the contemptuous eyes of my friends. Angrily said, but he never opened his mouth to confess his love to me? How do I know he likes me? Moreover, he always confronts me, and the things you guys said he never explained to me. How can I not hate him? My friends simultaneously laughed and said, didn't you say that you only like people stronger than yourself? Forget it. What an idiot in love. You deserve to make Tadakai suffer. But I heard that you two are about to get married, right? Looks like Tadakai is finally satisfied. Having said that, they pointed towards the familiar couple in the corner of the room. Don't think too much. Your mission today is to make fun of that scum. See, it's your ex-boyfriend and his dream lover. Didn't he ever look down on you, thinking you were just an ordinary girl with no value? Why did he immediately abandon you when he saw the person he secretly loved return? Let's see our normal Noyet with your own eyes. I looked in the direction you were pointing, my ex-boyfriend, True Yin Nin, the person who left me for the lover of my dreams, was wearing a black suit, holding the waist of a girl wearing a white evening gown. He broke up with me not because he still had feelings for her, but also because he thought I dressed too simply, came from an ordinary background, and couldn't help his career. So, when the lover of my dreams, who had a rich family background, returned, he didn't hesitate and immediately dumped me. I know all of this thanks to the recording that Tadakai sent me the night I was drunk. True Yin Nin himself told his friends so. My good sisters simultaneously walked towards them, and I leisurely followed behind. I only saw my dream lover, named Tanon. As soon as she saw my sisters and I, she happily came up and greeted me warmly. True Yin Nin took Tanon's arm and smiled. His appearance is exactly the standard of a gallant gentleman. My grandfather's close friend suddenly turned the conversation to True Yin Nin, pretending to be friendly, and asked, Tanon, is she the eldest daughter of Zhangti Group? Admiration. It's been a long time. I gently held her hand and then let it go, my eyes flickering between the two of them. When I saw Tanon's eyes looking at True Yin Nin becoming more and more unsympathetic, I finally felt a little less angry when I was dumped the day before. True Yin Nin criticized me for dressing normally and abandoned me because of Tanon's family background. I don't know what he said, but he blatantly brought Tanon along to annoy me. Now, I directly turned the card face up to reveal it. Yet, True Yin Nin could only look up at his glory-hungry nature. Surely he is regretting it now. As for Tanon, a wise person like her, surely, will quickly clean up his relationship with True Yin Nin. Combined with my grandfather and good sisters spreading this story, this bastard True Yin Nin should no longer think about defrauding any rich lady to climb high. Looks like his coming days won't be pleasant. Huh. Damn you bastard, it's all fake. After finishing the performance with their grandfather and everyone, exposing the scum of a man, they all went off to play separately. There was only me left, sitting in a corner, sipping sip after sip of a glass of dark red gold wine. Tadakai suddenly appeared and gave me a small piece of cake. Don't just drink alcohol. Eat something to fill your stomach. You won't get drunk later. I frowned, pointing to my waist that was tightly constricted by the skirt. Eat this in your stomach. It will be exposed immediately. Tadakai bowed his head and smiled softly, then took off his vest and covered my shoulders. The shirt is very long, covering my waist. He bent down to carefully adjust my collar and smiled with satisfaction. Now it's covered up, no one can see. I raised my head, meeting his bright eyes as he stood up straight. Our eyes met. Before, every time I saw him smile, I thought he was laughing at me. But after knowing that he had secretly liked me for a long time, this soft laugh made my heart itch indescribably. After a while, his ears gradually turned red. He was the first to look away and stammered. "You? Why are you looking at me like that?" I pursed my lips and smiled sweetly, saying, "To Dakai, thank you for giving me the recording, so I can see True Yin Nin's face clearly. Also thank you for preparing the party tonight to help me relieve my anger." To Dakai turned away, his voice a bit awkward. "You saw clearly but still went out to get drunk. It made me worry all day, thinking about the embarrassing thing that night." My face was hot and angry. "You said you were angry because you lost face in front of me." After saying that, I quickly ran to find some girls to continue playing. Hung feeling, if I stay next to Dakai any longer, I won't be able to control my heart rate. As I left, I vaguely heard Dakai's silly laughter from behind. Truly devalued. Since that party, I tacitly accepted this arranged marriage. After that, Dakai often took me to work. Sometimes he invites me out to eat. We even went to the amusement park together. Although his tongue is still not pleasant at all. For example, when eating cotton candy, he laughed at me eating it to the point that my makeup was smudged. When he left the house, he laughed at me and screamed like a squeaking chicken. While riding the roller coaster, he criticized me for stuffing my liver, but still enjoyed playing. But thinking about him patiently helping me wipe off the cotton candy stuck on my face, hugging me when I was scared by the haunted house staff, holding my hand tightly while riding the roller coaster, I decided to forgive his cruel mouth. Time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was already November. I kept the secret about the future in my heart, extremely confused. In the future, I will be pregnant with Zhang Tintin this year. But currently, Dakai and I haven't made any progress yet. Besides innocently holding hands, how could Zhang Tintin get pregnant? We are engaged. The wedding is scheduled for next month. If I wasn't pregnant with Zhang Tintin this year, would the baby I give birth to in the future still be Zhang Tintin? Thinking back to the short time I spent with Zhang Tintin, I felt that he was extremely adorable. So I should just take a risk and sleep with Dakai directly. I secretly told the maid in the house to stew on nutritious soup. Every day there is no shortage. Every meal brings it to Dakai to drink. As a result, he drank for half a month without feeling moved. Other than holding hands, he refused to take any further steps. Seeing that the middle of the month was approaching, I gritted my teeth and decided to find my best friend and Grandpa to get some experience. Grandpa laughed at me for being a fool for falling in love for a while, then gave me an order code, saying that she bought the things for me. Will be delivered urgently tonight. My mission is just to make an appointment with Dakai to come to my apartment. In the evening, I received the parcel from Mr. Scheiper and immediately opened it. Grandpa said what's inside will definitely help me achieve my wishes tonight. As soon as I opened the box and saw the delicate lace butterfly nightgown, my face immediately turned red. At this moment, my grandfather called, smiling evilly. "Hee hee, no yet. If you put on that full nightgown, you will definitely succeed. If it still doesn't work, then there must be a problem with Tada Kentucky. Be good. If he really doesn't work, let's change people soon." Having finished speaking, she decisively hung up immediately. Dakai also called. No yet. I've bought the wontons you want to eat. They'll arrive in 10 minutes. Hearing the beeping sound on the phone, I gritted my teeth, picked up my lace butterfly nightgown, and changed into it. 10 minutes later, as soon as Dakai walked in, I hugged him tightly, leaving him stunned under the dim light. His handsome face turned red. My hands dangled in midair, not knowing where to put them. I also blushed, pulled his hand and placed it on my waist, then led him into the bedroom full of roses. The lights were off. Under the moonlight, the silhouette moved until it became light. In mid-December, I held a pregnancy test, 2 lines, and breathed a sigh of relief. "It's okay, my little chimpanzee." I immediately called my grandfather, mother, and a large circle of relatives to tell the good news, but forgot to tell Dakai. In the evening, I stayed at the Zhang family's house, happily enjoying Mrs. Chu's dedicated care. At this moment, I received a call from Dakai. My voice is full of resentment. No yet. Are you working overtime? I didn't see you when I got home." "Yes, recently. In order to be intimate with you, I always live in an apartment near the company. I ate the bird's nest and comfortably replied, I'm not at home. Takai immediately showed his age. Dear Noyet, why are you suddenly home? Ms. Chu sat next to her. Hearing this, she immediately grabbed the phone and said, You rotten boy, Noyet is pregnant. If you don't go home, don't stay in that tiny apartment. How do you take care of her? Takai was stunned, dumbfounded for a few seconds, then suddenly woke up and excitedly said, You're pregnant? Who is Noyet? My father and Mrs. Chu were immediately unhappy and took turns scolding to Kentucky. On the phone, looking at Takai being cursed to the point where I had no way to resist, I burst out laughing. I suddenly remembered that I hadn't told him about my pregnancy. Then I'm sorry. Next year, Zhang Tintin is now 4 years old, looking exactly like the boy I saw when I traveled through time, both cute and soft. As for Takai, his thoughtful and clingy appearance is becoming more and more similar to when I met him the last time I traveled through time. One day, when I found an old notebook in the reading room, I accidentally turned over an old diary. Those are the diary entries Takai wrote intermittently for more than 10 years, from high school until now. April 21st, 2013. Tomorrow I must confess my love to Noyet. Come on, let's fight.